We are back. Thanks so much for being here again.
Of course, happy to be here.
So, you got here about an hour ago, and we were talking to Cliff, and we decided that what we were talking about today is what got you not just going in business, but what inspired you in business, what kept you going, and some of your basic principles that you believed were important, that maybe still were important, things that you realized weren't important, things that were beliefs that pulled you forward, beliefs that held you back, stuff like that. And I'd really like to get into some of your beliefs because I'm some years behind you, and I would like to see where I can pick up some things and where I can expand on some of your ideas.
You have a friend in your. You got it. Okay.
Did I have a fly?
Yep, you had. It wasn't a fly. It was like a little spider.
Oh.
Like a really little one.
Oh.
It's gone now.
Well, great. Well, he can eat all of the mites and dust mites.
Wait, no, there it is. Here we go.
Oh.
Just one of those little tiny ones.
Oh,
little
well.
tiny black ones. There it is. See? Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna have to cut. You're gonna have to cut the spider infestation.
No, I think it's okay. It's that or wasps and.
Well, I'd take a little itty bitty spider over a wasp.
Their little friends.
So, I guess are there any like particular questions you'd like me to start at?
So, the reason I went self-employed, I don't really have a business since I don't really maintain employees. As much as some folks like, oh no, you need to say you own a business. No, I don't. I'm self-employed. I work for myself, and my boss is a jerk. Makes me work too much and doesn't pay me enough and all that stuff. Right, right. It's terrible. Makes me do the work of 5 people, and the reason I did it though is because I don't make a good employee.
Right.
I just don't, and I don't like being. I don't have a problem with authority per se. I have a problem with arbitrary authority. Do this because I said so. I didn't even really grow up that way. And for me, being self-employed meant I got to figure things out on my own, and I got to fail on my own, and I also got to succeed. Also, it was job security because a lot of people say, oh no, get a good job and that's job security. No, your job is at the whim of one person or a bunch of people who then conspire against you to then get you fired by that one person, whereas I can lose 10% of my bosses and be fine. I can be fired by 50 people and be fine. For me, that's a job security of where I am not at the mercy and emotional whims of other people. One of my first jobs was as a machinist. I was trained as a millwright machinist, and the husband and wife ran it. The wife ran the floor, the bullpen. The husband ran all the programming and stuff like that. And whenever they had a fight or a disagreement, it got kicked over to the employees. And since I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, as the new guy, I caught it the most. And one of the things that made me quit, because within 6 months I was lead on swing shift, but one of my coworkers, a little old lady, told me, because she was friends with the people, because she would watch their dogs. Like she was a low level employee, but she was also friends with them. She told me how the boss gal, Ms. Boss, had told her, I just love picking on Micah because it's so easy and he just takes it. And in a week I gave my 2 weeks. Because it was just the last straw for me, because if they told me, you messed up, fix it, I'd say, yes ma'am, I'm sorry, I'll fix it.
Right.
I gave no lip. It was just like, okay, I messed up, I'll fix it. And then when I realized they were just taking advantage of that, where they were abusing my good faith, it was, I'm done.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Yeah. So actually you did make a good employee. It's just that you got to a point that you weren't willing to sacrifice your self-worth for somebody else's success.
Right.
Because I mean, if you were yes, ma'am, I'll fix it. You know, that's what everybody wants in an employee.
Right.
But then they take advantage of it, and that's where you kind of wised up, and you're like, wait a second, you know.
Right. And I don't
Um,
even hold it against them because
yeah.
I set up the situation for them to do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in all relationships, people treat you the way you let them.
Yeah. True. So I think starting where let's see, I'm trying to gain my thoughts on where this all started because I knew from a and I don't want to I hate saying this because I don't want people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs to think, "Oh, I need to have known this is what I wanted to do forever." Like
Right.
I need
That's
to,
not how it works.
you know, because that's not it. Anybody can
Right.
be an entrepreneur. For me, I just happen to know from a young age that I wanted my own business. Like that was just something I always knew. Looking
I did
back,
not.
I think, you know, the big thing for me. So okay, so there's a book I read involving everybody's has a genius. So I think it's the Six Geniuses or something along those lines. That talks about, you know, everybody's really good at something. So yeah. The Six Types of Working Geniuses is the book I read, and this isn't something I realized till I was older, so I'd say in the last couple of years. But now looking back, I know this is why I took the path that I took. So the six types of working genius are there's the wonder, so that's the person who likes to ask, you know, why are things done this way? Is there a better way to do it? I wonder if there's a better way to do things. You know, the person who kind of generates why are we doing it this way and could it be done differently? And then there's the invention person, so that's the person who comes up with inventions of new things, so new products, new solutions, new stuff. And then discernment is the person that can look at an idea and say that'll work or that won't work.
Okay.
Then there's galvanizing, which is the person who's really good at getting people motivated, getting people to take action and do things. And then there's the enabler. So it sounds bad, but the enabler is actually the person who always has what's necessary to do something.
Right. Makes
so
it happen.
It's the person that packs snacks on a hike. You know,
Right.
That's the person who will always have what's necessary to get something accomplished. And then tenacity, so the person who will just keep pushing through to the end and make sure whatever it is gets done.
Okay.
So once I read the book, a lot of things came clear to me where I was like, okay, I'm a wanderer. Another word for that is a visionary. So I would make a really good employee because I like to meet people's expectations.
And think ahead with the employer, what needs to come next.
But I don't make a good employee because I'm the wanderer, so I'm always wanting to improve things and do things different. And I was actually fired from multiple jobs when I was young because I was trying to make recommendations of we could improve this, we could improve that.
Right.
You know, trying to make improvements, and employers don't like that.
Right.
Sometimes.
It questions their authority.
Yeah.
It upsets the apple cart.
Yep.
Plus, the thing is, it ticks off your fellow employees because they just want to be left alone in the known. And they don't want to have to come up with new, more efficient systems.
So for
How
me,
dare you?
Yep. So for me, I'm a visionary, and I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always thinking about 10 years, 20 years, like way out into the future and what I want that to look like. And that doesn't work for an employee because for me as an employee, I'm too busy with the task at hand that I'm frustrated because I want to be thinking about where something's going to be in 5 years, where something's, you know, I'm not the doer. I don't like to do, I'm good at it, but I don't like to do the technical tasks because I want to be visualizing what's in the future.
You get caught up in the trees, you don't see the forest, get stuck in the minutia.
So for me, you know, I think that's why I always knew. This doesn't mean that it makes a good entrepreneur or not. Like, you can be a good entrepreneur and not have that early idea of that's what I want to do. Right. I just knew early on because I'm the wanderer, the visualizer, the visionary. And so that's how I got on the track of entrepreneurship. Was I was fired from jobs when I was younger and I wanted to improve stuff all the time. So I'm like, okay, if I want to do this, clearly I'm going to have to do it for myself because nobody else wants me coming in and tweaking and turning, you know, they're business snobs. So I'm like, okay. So early on, I knew I wanted to own a business. That's the belief behind that.
Okay. Well, what do you think about the idea of less is more? So here's the way I saw it. So, in Fight Club, Tyler Durden says, we buy things, we go into debt to buy things to impress people we don't know or like, or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
My specific experience with it, my experience of the truth was going on my first motorcycle trip. I went from North Idaho to Colorado, to Springs in Colorado, and I had a pile of stuff on the back of my bike. And a day into the trip, half a day into the trip, I realized I had too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
More stuff doesn't mean better experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it at the time, but it's called the law of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
And halfway through that day, I remembered when I was a kid thinking, why is space travel such an issue? Just put on more fuel. Well, they have a specific mathematical ratio with certain rockets, with how much thrust they have, and all these things, with jet planes as well, of how much fuel you can carry until you're carrying fuel just for the excess fuel you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I then thought about that with the stuff I had, and I realized more doesn't equal more.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the fun things for me was when I first started window cleaning, I had a hatchback. Well, I can clean homes on the lake on stilts that are 3 stories on a cliff on the lake out of a hatchback. And I see guys with trucks around here that are just piled full.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, piled full. Whereas with my pickup truck, I'll show up at a job and they'll offer me equipment.
Right.
Like, do you need ladders? Do you need more stuff? I said, oh no, I have it all. And they're blown away. And that's one of the fun things for me is 90% of the stuff I have, I use 90% of the time. And 5% of the stuff I have, I use 10% of the time. And 5% of the stuff I have, I use almost never.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't think that math checks out, but it's close enough. And that was one of the things I found out with what I do in my work is this quote's attributed to Bill Gates, who said, if we have a new project that we're trying to get done and no one knows how to do it, I always find the laziest person because he will find the fastest, most efficient way to do it. And month of June, I had one day off, was working 15-hour days. But at the same time, I consider myself lazy because I don't want to do something just for the sake of doing it. And I know people who will go to the nth degree, checking all the T's and the I's, and that's not for me. I don't enjoy that. It's where it's like, what do we need to do a good job consistently and efficiently? The rest of those details. So it was I think it's the Pareto principle,
Mm-hmm.
where Nobel Prize winning economist found out in his garden that 20% of his seeds produced 80% of his yield. And the inverse was true, where 80% of his seeds only produced 20% of his yield. So he then began checking markets in the stock market,
Mm-hmm.
and he realized that 20% of investors were making 80% of the profits
Mm-hmm.
and in the stock market, and 80% of investors were then splitting 20% of the profits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I've begun to focus on more and more the last 2 years is what 20% of my clients bring me 80% of my profit,
Mm-hmm.
but also what 20% of my clients bring me 80% of the hassle.
Mm-hmm.
And then just raise the price on them to where it's more worth the hassle or they self-select out.
Right.
So with you, what has been your experience with that in business when you're trying to make things more efficient? without sacrificing your rules, what's important to you. What's your experience been in this?
Well, the 80-20 rule is definitely something I live by. I think everybody should. I think it applies to absolutely everything
I
in the whole
agree.
universe.
Right.
And, how you said you show up with a hatchback and minimal tools.
Used to.
Used to.
But I still have the same amount of tools, just in a pickup truck.
I think that's efficiency, and that's a wise thing to do. I think that a lot of business owners, and maybe I should distinguish between a business owner and an
Contractor, self-employed.
self-employed person. So somebody who's self-employed goes out and they basically created a job for themselves. Like they are an employee to their own business.
Right.
So those types of people, I think, never move beyond self-employment because they get caught up in buying, they just want to buy the tool because they want the tool. They get caught up in the stuff and the, I want this brand new ladder, or I want this brand new, yes, they just get caught up in that, and they just end up with a bunch of unnecessary stuff, which causes them, they can't focus on what's important. And you can make decent money being self-employed, but that's not owning a business.
Right.
To own a business, you have to cut the fat. You've got to zone in on what's important. What is that top 20% that makes you the most money, and do those things. So you would, like you said, figure out, I analyze my company this way. I figure out the top 20% of clients, and then I figure out what those clients have in common, and then I target more of those clients. And so, you were talking about price increase to eliminate certain clients. That's when you would raise prices to eliminate those clients to target your top 20%, so you have more of your top 20%, and you just keep doing that, and then your business will just become more and more profitable. And that's something I've always done. It's important to do as a business owner. A business owner works on their business, not in their business.
Right.
And
and it's a different ball game, which is why I have no shame in my game making that distinction or trying to pretend, oh, I own my business. No, I don't. I'm self-employed. I went out, I made a job for myself, and I'm working that job.
Yeah.
I'm not working the business.
Yes.
It may sound nice to say I'm a business owner, but it's just not true. I do well, I work hard, and I'm good with what I do. But it's not the same, and that's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah. And for me, I guess when I wanted to be a business owner, that's what I meant. I want to be a business owner. Like when I started the landscape company, I did everything. But as I was doing all those things, my brain was going nonstop about where I'm actually headed. And I did everything I could from day one to work myself out of as many roles as possible. Until now, I'm worked out of the business almost entirely. And so that's where I keep finding myself, is working myself out of roles to where I'm like, what do I do now? And then I move on to the next. So, extending on the conversation we had last week about serial entrepreneurship. It's like that's how I do things. I organize them in a way that I don't have to be involved, and then I have to start over again because I've worked myself out of it.
And then you need
and then I need something else to do.
So that you don't get bored, because intelligent people don't get bored.
And I just don't, it's not an option for me to go back into operations. People are like, well, why don't you sell again? Because I like sales. I do. But I don't want to spend my days selling, because then I'm not thinking 5-10 years ahead. So it's the cycle for me that I like to visualize something, and then I like to put all the pieces together to make it happen. And then I like to step out of it and then start over again.
Right.
So yeah, as a business owner, I think less is more. You want to figure out that 20%. Not deal with all the other noise, because distraction is the reason, a main reason people don't succeed, because they get distracted about other things that are unimportant. So you should either, once you figure out that top 20% of activities you need to do as a business owner or as a self-employed person trying to move into business ownership, figure out the 20% of activities that bring you the most return on investment. Things that you need to do. Everything else should be eliminated or delegated.
Right.
So, and it's a stepping stone process. So initially, I hired my first employees my first year to do the landscape maintenance because that wasn't a good return on investment for me to be doing it. But I still sold. I had to so I stepped out of doing the landscaping maintenance, but then I continued to sell jobs, and then I had employees to do that. And then once that started going, I kept doing what are the 20% activities that I need to be doing until I worked myself all the way out of the business.
Right.
Because with every step comes new challenges, new problems. Like, that's the thing, is you don't solve a problem and, life's great. You solve a problem and then there's another one right on your plate. And it just keeps going like that, basically.
Back to life being a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
On the notes, and I think this applies to a younger person looking for a job and also for someone looking to hire and retain employees. What is it that you look for in an employee that you can advance and move along? So that way a person knows what to work on to be an employee, and also how to spot an employer who is looking to move employees on, which I think is actually most employers, is that they actually are trying to find those employees they can move along to promote and pay more to then solve more of the problems for the boss, so that the boss isn't tearing his hair out and working 18-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what are the things that you look for in an employee that a person can say, okay, I can work on that part, and also that would help employers look at things who maybe have a trouble hiring and retaining talent?
So back to the 6 geniuses. Each business only needs one wanderer, one visionary. You get 2 visionaries, you've got problems.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
So you need one visionary,
Okay.
which sometimes isn't the business owner. Sometimes the business owner prefers to be the technical doer and hires a visionary. So one visionary, and then for the inventors, you have to think of roles. For example, my business, I'm the visionary. The inventor is the COO, so he's the one that's, I say, hey, I wonder why we do it this way. He's the one that runs with that and says, let me invent some solutions for you. And he comes up with, how about we do this, this, or this?
Okay.
So I really only need one inventor also. What I look for personally, and that's the thing, you have to know your business. You have to know your own core values. You have to know what your objective is as a business. Who are you serving? Why are you serving them? What is it? What is the purpose of the business? And then you want to know your vision of where you're going. So you need to know your business first to know what you would need in particular. For me, speaking from my experience, I need a bunch of galvanizers. So my managers have to be galvanizers.
Okay.
So for a management role for each of my crews, I want a galvanizer. Someone who can get people excited about their job that day and excited to be there, happy to be there. They're the people that are encouraging and lifting people up. Those people make really great managers. The enablers also. So galvanizer, enabler together would be fantastic because you've got someone who's encouraging, but also someone who always has what's needed to get the job done.
That makes sense.
But you need someone on, every crew who's the enabler, somebody who remembers to grab everything that they need for that job that day. So for my labor roles, I'm looking for enablers and, enablers really, the ones that are like, hey, I've got what you need. And tenacity, so people who can not get bored with the job before it's done.
The stick-with-itness.
So I kind of, go back to those 6 and just plug in so you figure out what personality type you're looking for each type of role, and make sure you're hiring for that, because you can't train that.
Right.
These are people's inherent
tendencies.
core values, who they are. So if you hire someone who's a wanderer and you try to put them in a labor role, it's never going to work. So it's more important to hire for somebody's inherent core values or personality type, and then put them in the right spot. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, because then, for one, that helps employers or people who are in charge of hiring,
Mm-hmm.
and it also helps an employee, because I would imagine that most employers, perhaps not an overwhelming majority, but most of them are kind of aware of that type of a deal,
Mm-hmm.
where this is the type of person we need for this job.
Mm-hmm.
And if an employee can come in and say, hey, this seems like a job for, or ask and find out, what is it you're looking for? Well, okay, if you're looking for more of a galvanizer, well, I'm actually more of an enabler. This is what I do. I'm always prepared. Uh, I know how to work with people. You know, sell yourself, and that's what so much of it all comes down to. I realize that everything in life is sales, from
Mm-hmm.
flirtation to working a business
Mm-hmm.
to relationships, is how to present one's own value in a way that is agreeable, amenable to other people. And that's one thing about Toastmasters, and why I'm in it, is because it allows me to use my words to explain clearly what I'm doing and why I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I use, one of the rhetorical tools I use for work, is I'll show up at a job, and they'll either ask about it, or I'll just bring it up if they don't. Is I'll say, hey, I'm wearing inside shoes. I switch each time I come into a client's home. Is that okay, or would you prefer I go without shoes at all? Like, oh no, inside shoes are great. Always been the case. And the fact that I say it, though,
Mm-hmm.
shows to them that I'm thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
especially for first time clients. And there have been some where, a couple years ago, I had a few clients ask if I would wear a mask. Or first thing they'll say, okay, we have white carpets, please wear shoes, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, I have inside shoes, but what are the things I'll use for that? If they'll ask me to do something in a particular way, or I say, listen, because they'll most of the time be like, sorry for the inconvenience, but please do this. And I say, this is your home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to serve you. If you want me to hop around on one leg and hum while I clean your glass, I'll do it. Might charge extra for it, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
This is your home, and I'm happy to do whatever you need. And they love that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things of not just what is being said, but what is being communicated to them, that shows where I put value in things. And as a prospective employee, if one takes a look at a little bit of any of the business where the person's applying, can see, oh, they need a visionary, or they need a technician, or an enabler, or a
Mm-hmm.
galvanizer. They need something like that, and actually then go and sell that to them. And if they know themselves enough to be able to do that, then they're more likely to actually not just find the position and get hired for it, but a position where they actually do well.
And that's the problem that I see mostly as somebody who hires people, is that most people don't have a clue who they are, what they want, what they're like. They don't know. And everybody says the same thing. Everybody says, I'm great with people. I'm great with customer service. Every single person. And I could tell you what, not every single person is good at customer service.
Right.
But they'll say they are.
That's a very loose metric.
So as an employer, it's my job to. I've studied personality types. I've studied body language. I've studied all this stuff, and it's my job to ask the right questions to draw the real personality out, because people don't lie intentionally. They just have no idea who they are. They haven't taken the time to really figure it out, and people are applying for jobs to get paid, and they don't think, what actually would I be good at? Like, they don't even know that world exists. I mean, I didn't know that world existed until I started hiring people.
Right.
And then I realized, no, people are out there searching and they don't even know what they're searching for. And it's our job as employers to ask the right questions, to figure out who they are and see if they fit the role that we need to fill. Because you can't rely on them. I can't ask somebody, tell me what you're good at. They're going to tell me all the basic stuff. I'm great with people. I'm good at sales. I'm a great customer service person. But are they really? I mean, I have to ask questions to find out if they really are and to draw out their personality. And then I have to make judgment calls on, if they are the personality that they portray themselves to be.
Makes sense. I found it to be true that we're either moving towards or we're moving away from something. And most people, when they don't know what they want, they don't know who they are, they're just moving away from all the things they don't like. Love is a moving towards emotion. Fear is a moving away emotion. And one thing I heard years ago, and every time it comes up, it's proven more and more true to myself, that it is true that the two baseline emotions are love and fear. I think even in Star Wars episode 5 or whatever, Yoda talks about, fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about people not knowing who they are or really what they want, they are moving away from things and they're just kind of casting around in the unexplored things where they don't know if they want it, but they also don't know if they don't want it, but they know they don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what I was moving towards with what I do is I wanted to continue to screw off for 3 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful time. And I was moving towards a feeling and sense of self-sufficiency and doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. With you, and we'll finish the podcast on this, was what is it that you're moving towards? Like what's kind of the thing that pulls you along? Because in my experience, it's a bit like the Dr. Seuss push me pull ya, where when I've been most galvanized is when there's something I'm moving away from, and I also have a vision of where I'm going ahead, where I know I don't want to be a 9 to 5 who's at the arbitrary whims of a human being who's also emotional and irrational, just like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have this idea of financial independence insofar as that's actually possible, and being able to go, okay, you know what? I can bust my butt for 3 more weeks, then I'm just going to take a week off. Mm-hmm. I can get through this, and then I'll go do that. Having that sense of freedom and knowing that I can go out no matter what happens and then go and do something and rack up the business, get the clients and do that, that brings me a lot of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm moving towards, is away from that lack of time, lack of freedom, and towards an abundance of doing what I enjoy doing when I want to do it because I enjoy doing it. Do you have something that pulled you along in your business, or something that pulls you along now, something that keeps you going when things get monotonous, becomes drudgery?
It's funny because, I was mentioning how people don't know what they want. I don't know what I want still. I think with every step, people just continuously don't really know what they want, which is why conversations like this are important, because being asked questions by somebody causes me to think about things that I wouldn't think about if I weren't prompted. So, originally, yeah, financial freedom, absolutely. And I'd say I have not achieved financial freedom, but I have achieved financial independence.
Right.
So financial independence I can do what I want when I want. Like whatever I want to do, I can basically do. Not financial free, because I still need to produce an income to keep that financial independence. I haven't made enough money to be like, don't gotta work again a day in my life.
Right.
So originally that was it. I achieved that. And obviously I'm still going. So the next thing, doing what I want to do when I want to do it. That was a little harder. Business, you think, oh, I'm going to have freedom of my time. No, you're not.
No.
You're going to have less time, less freedom. I mean, it's a serious grind when you're starting a business, and you have to put that time in where you have no freedom. I spent 6 years straight not really spending too much time with friends, not spending time doing the human connection thing. Like, I didn't have time. I was building a business. I had no time to focus on relationships. I did prioritize my marriage, but that was probably the only relationship that I prioritized, and all the time I spent with others was what my husband wanted me to do. My own friends, were kind of like, I had shunned a little, which I get because they felt like they were getting shunned a little. But I was on a mission, so I'm like, this is what I'm doing right now.
Right.
I'm coming out of that phase now where I'm going back and reaching out and making human connections again, because I've now worked myself out of the daily role. And so I've shifted into this focus of, my days are free. Like, I do have the freedom now to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Like, I have. And it's hard because most people don't have that. So it leaves me, like you were saying last time, who can take off on a Tuesday and go do something, I'm left wondering, who do I have to spend my time with, because nobody else has the same freedom of time that I have.
Right.
And
it makes it a little bit lonely.
Yeah, so I mean, but I do have that now, and I'm still going, so clearly now there's something else that's pulling me, which I want to live in another country. I want to live there for a minimum of 6 months, and maybe for longer. I don't know. But I want freedom to travel at this point. I want to go see places, meet different people and different cultures, and get outside of this world that I live in.
Right.
Where I live currently.
Well, it's one of those things, kind of like breaking the habit of being yourself and finding out if there's another niche where you could fit. That was one of the fun things that I had, was I thought I would live abroad when I was young, especially with my connections in Europe. I thought that would be a lot of fun. It'd be great, all that stuff. And I'd go and live abroad for 3 months a year, and I did that for a handful of years in a row, and I began to realize I really like it here.
Yeah.
I really do. And I didn't have to go abroad to find that out, but at the same time, yeah, I did. And that's one of those fun things, is trying a thing, squeezing all the juice out of it, and then finding out if this is my bag or not. It was kind of like that phase I went through in my young 20s where I was really attracted and loved to date girls who looked like coke fiends. But they weren't.
Right.
They just had that look, the long, like, wayfish, the black hair and the...
Kate Moss style.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, my land.
Well, like she is a crackhead.
Right. Well, where it was like their thighs are as big as their calves, and they're just like, they look like spiders. Yeah. And for a while, I thought that was hot, and then I got over that.
Yeah.
But being able to experience those things, and that's one of the important things for me, and it sounds like it is for you, was being able to have the ability to try a thing just to try it and see if we like it.
100%.
And you can't do that working a 9 to 5 where you maybe get a week's paid vacation a year, because that sucks.
Yeah,
that sucks a lot.
And the insatiability of human nature, like that's so you were talking about underlying beliefs. I would say my number one underlying belief that motivates everything I do is that life should be enjoyed. I think that everybody should be able to enjoy their life. And I get actually upset. We talked about this a little bit last time about employees, when they live in a world where they don't enjoy their life, and they don't even know that they could enjoy their life.
And we have friends like that too.
It's a struggle because I'm like, life should be enjoyed. Like,
Right.
I mean, it's not always going to be easy. Life's meant to be hard. It's designed to be hard.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy it. And so
We get the most joy out of solving the problems.
And so I swing from the one thing to another, just to try it, just to try it, just because I want to try it and see if I could be good at it. And I've picked up a lot of hobbies, and the last couple of years I've narrowed down. Less is more, like you were saying earlier. Narrowed down my hobbies because I have tried so many, and I've been pretty good at a lot of them. But I'm like, I don't have time to do all of them, so now I've picked my top 20%, and I'm like, these are my hobbies.
Yep.
Let's spend the time on these. And so with where I'm going now, living abroad, I just want to do it because it's an option, and I think that all options should be explored.
Well, and plus it's just cool. Like, that was one of the best pieces of advice that Cliff ever gave me. Was he said, listen, man, because I think he heard in my conversation that I was trying to justify my position and what I wanted to do. And he said, listen, man, the fact that you want to do something is reason enough to do a thing.
Yeah. If you have the thought, I mean, obviously there's a limit to this.
Right.
There's murderers that are like, I had the,
right.
Like,
it's not about that.
No,
we are talking about people who are normal people with normal things and normal desires that are socially acceptable to act out.
Yes.
Of where, when people ask me, why would you go on a motorcycle trip coast to coast? Well, because I could and it seemed cool.
Why not?
I don't know if I would do it again.
Right.
Maybe on a different bike.
Yeah.
But on a bike that's made for it. But, like, just to do it, of where it's just fun.
Yeah, it's something new. And like we were saying before, boredom equals unhappiness.
Right.
So to keep happy,
and unhappy people are bored.
I don't let myself get bored. And not that it doesn't happen. I get stuck in ruts. Like the injury I was talking about pulled me out of a rut and brought me to a really good spot. I mean, I'm still recovering from it, and there's things that I can't do at the moment that I would love to do because, but because of it I can't. But it caused me to shift my thinking, because I had myself stuck in this box of like, I had in my head that I couldn't step away from my business because it needed me. Well, the injury left me no choice.
Right.
And I handed over the reins to the operations manager, and it's actually running. And I'm like, oh, wow. I was holding myself up.
They don't need me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what Cliff had said, too, last time, was his focus has entirely been on not what the stroke has done to him from a year and a half ago, but what the stroke is doing for him. And I have seen nothing but positive results come from it. He still has a little bit of a hard time on his right side, but beyond some of the minimal physical ailments, it's shifted his thinking. And in my experience, that's the most important thing we can experience, which is why it's nice to do these Thursday breakfasts that we do, and doing this weekly podcast is I have to shift my thinking in order to make it work, to make it enjoyable, and to maintain it.
And that's a good, important thing, is shifting your thinking. So there's a silver lining to everything. I was severely injured, and the hobbies that I said I narrowed down, I can't even do either of them right now because of it. So, but I've shifted my thinking, and I think that's, one key to being more joyful in life is shift your thinking. Don't try to fit the universe into your box. You have to shift your thinking to fit the universe. Find the flow. Get in the flow. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, if you're trying to paddle upstream because
you think that all the effort means all the results.
No,
it's like,
get in the flow and go downstream. And it's the same thing with the headwinds and tailwinds we were talking about last time. Find that tailwind and enjoy it.
Go with the trade winds, the currents, find the way, find the path of no resistance.
Yeah.
Because if you have resistance, and somewhere within you or outside yourself, there's conflict. And if there's that resistance, there's a difference between something being difficult to do and there being resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And being engaged in the way and having these conversations that I've had with you guys, it helps me distinguish, am I just going through something difficult because I'm trying to figure it out, which is a form of cooperation, like being in a dojo, or am I actually involved in resistance because there's some sort of conflict?
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people spend time in that conflict, and that's why they don't make progress, because they're trying. And you have to be adaptable. Like, you have to be adaptable, because we have so many factors out of our control.
Right.
That we have to adapt to whatever comes at us, because we don't know what that's going to be.
And all we can control is our thoughts about a thing.
And we can have an end goal in mind and adapt on the way to it. You can't, nothing's a linear straight line to the end. You have to work around whatever happens to get in your way.
And a detour is not always a bad thing.
Right.
And that's one of the
always something good to come from something negative.
right.
Silver lining.
Yeah. If one decides to see it that way, if one has, it's I think I talked about it with a friend this past week, was be still and know that I am God. Still means be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And have faith in God's plan. Mm-hmm. Well, if you have a belief that God is some angry person who will just mess with you just because he can, then you don't really want to trust in God's plan. Right. If you see God as the driving force behind all life and creation, if you trust that the end goal of God's plan is life, abundance, success, flourishing, all of that, then you can look at a thing. It's like, okay, be still and know that I am God. Trust in God's plan. When you stop railing against the wind, where you stop being pissed off that it snows each year up here, when you stop being pissed off that it gets hot every August, and you just go with the flow and accept it for what it is, that's what then creates a sense of peace, and that's what allows us to be in love and not in fear. And it's then that's where the moving forward comes in, which is creation, thinking ahead, and being on the way.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I think we got a little deeper on less things this time around, and I'm excited to post this conversation.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.
I think we have a lot more to dive into, because seems like even with what we talked
we?
about today, I'm like, gosh, there's so much more to it.
Right. Well, we too are also just subject to space and time. So
yes.
Thanks so much for being here, and
yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll talk next time.
Okay.
Thanks.